worthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thine fear before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affection, the result of all our counsel may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Put on my mask, I'm afraid, you know. I don't like me to take off my mask. I like to take off my mask.
Call of the roll. This Honourable House now resumes its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Montague, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malahoo Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Terrelong, Miss Smith, Mr. Main, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Davis, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Mr. Clark, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Lee, Mr. Miller, Ms. Morrison, Ms. Nita, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Phillips is here too, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Sibbles, Mr. Slowly, Mr. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Witter, Mr. Wright.
Statements by ministers.
Madam Speaker, there are two statements by ministers today. The first will by the Minister of Justice, and it will be followed by the statement from the Minister of Health and Wellness, the Honourable Dr. Christopher Tufton. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Chuck. Minister Chuck, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My statement has been circulated.
I was just about to ask.
Madam Speaker, Parliament should take note of a recently delivered judgment of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, hereafter referred to as JCPC, in the case of Hines and others, the appellants, and the Director of Public Prosecutions, delivered this Monday, April 19, 2021. Madam Speaker, the case is significant as it brings to an end the legal challenges brought by the appellants to avoid giving evidence in open court. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, the JCPC clarified that Section 16(3) of our Constitution applies to proceedings under the Mutual Assistance Criminal Matters Act, hereafter referred to as MACMA. Moreover, the judgment declares the importance of how Section 16(3) of the Constitution protects litigants who give evidence in open court. Madam Speaker, I want to thank our courts for emphasizing the importance of the principle of open justice. It is disappointing, Madam Speaker, that a straightforward issue such as this had to go to the Privy Council for them to reinforce that, one, Section 16(3) of our Constitution applies to proceedings under MACMA, and two, the best remedy against injustice and to ensure fairness in our justice system is for matters such as the Trafigura matter to be dealt with in open court. This constitutional protection is for the benefit of all citizens in this great country, Madam Speaker, and if the appellants are standing on good ground, they should have nothing to worry about if their evidence is taken in open court. The core of the principle of open justice, Madam Speaker, lies in the benefits of the proper administration of justice arising from public scrutiny of judicial proceedings. It ensures that proceedings are conducted fairly and in a manner which recognizes the rights of any individuals involved in the proceedings before the courts. Madam Speaker, as this Parliament is aware, the Trafigura matter is coming from as far back as 2006, when it became public that the company Trafigura Behir, BV Amsterdam, otherwise called Trafigura, was being investigated for allegations of contravention of, one, the Dutch Penal Code in relation to contributions to political parties, bribery, among other things, and two, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD Convention on Combating Bribery of Foreign Public Officials in International Business Transactions in 1997. Madam Speaker, it is time for this matter to be brought to an end. 15 years have elapsed since this matter was brought to the public's attention, and to date the people of Jamaica are not clear as to what took place. It is incumbent on the parties to cooperate with the DPP to bring closure to this matter. I agree with the Leader of the Opposition that the matter should be disposed of once and for all. As the Leader of the Opposition said, let this matter be over with, let the truth come out, and let the chips fall where they may. Madam Speaker, the allegations were that Trafigura made certain donations to the People's National Party through a Jamaican company called CCO Association, and as a result of these allegations, the government of Jamaica was asked to undertake various investigations by interviewing witnesses, including the appellants. The appellants refused, Madam Speaker, to provide assistance on the ground that they were unable to assist in any investigation of bribery because they knew nothing about it. Madam Speaker, it was because of the appellant's willingness to assist that the Central Authority, our DPP, resorted to seeking the intervention of the court under the provisions of MACMA. And Madam Speaker, it is really unfortunate that government officials who, to the best of our knowledge, were not under investigation, refused to cooperate with the DPP in a matter as important as this. By order of the court made on November 17, 2010, Madam Speaker, the appellants were ordered to appear before a judge of the Supreme Court to give evidence and oath in response to the question being asked by the government of the Netherlands in their investigation of Trafigura. In response, Madam Speaker, the appellants sought an order from the full court that if their evidence is taken in open court, it would be in contravention of their rights because the provisions of Section 16(3) of the Constitution, which requires that proceedings are dealt with in open court, did not apply to the taking of their evidence under MACMA. In other words, Madam Speaker, the appellants wanted to give their evidence in the privacy of the court chambers, out of the eyes of the public. But, Madam Speaker, the full court refused this application on the basis of the principle of open justice and were of the view that even when a matter was heard in chambers, the judicial process remained an essentially public function. Madam Speaker, the appellants filed an appeal against the judgment of the full court, and this appeal was dismissed by the Court of Appeal. They then sought and received leave to appeal the decision of the Court of Appeal at the Privy Council on the grounds that, among other things, Section 16(3) of the Constitution does not apply to proceedings under Section 20 of MACMA, and the taking of evidence in public contravenes Section 19 of MACMA. Madam Speaker, the Privy Council dismissed every ground and supporting submission of the appellants as being misguided and without merit. It further emphasized, Madam Speaker, that open justice protects the appellants as they still have the right to refuse to answer questions where they may incriminate themselves. In other words, Madam Speaker, the right to self-incrimination was reinforced in this judgment as it applies to the appellants. Madam Speaker, the Jamaican people now need to know all the facts of this case, such as one, what, if any, was the nexus between the alleged donation to the PNP and the renewal of the Trafigura contract with the government to continue lifting of oil for Jamaica. Two, if it is found that the donation was a political donation, why was it given to CCO Association and not directly to the political party?
Madam Speaker, on a point of order. This matter is before the court. I haven't intervened because the nature of the matter and my own position on it are well known. But where the minister is now venturing is to say what issues he wants to see ventilated in those proceedings. Those proceedings are brought by the government of the Netherlands in respect of their investigation of that company. And they have specific issues that they would like to hear from persons who may have that information. Now, this whole pathway that the minister is pursuing, as saying he wants to hear this and Jamaica wants to hear that and so on. It's really quite irregular and improper. This is a matter before the courts now. And I mean, I know that there's political gravamen, there's political mileage that they would like to see. That is the only reason it is being raised today. That is the only reason why this is being raised today. I understand that. You can pretend otherwise, but you know it's true. You can pretend otherwise, but you know it is true. But, Madam Speaker, the point is, this is a matter before the court. We all hope that it will be resolved soon. And at that point, when the matter is at an end...
Mr. Golding, members, the leader of the opposition has a right to be heard.
No, sir.
And I would like to hear so that I can respond. Please let me hear
those proceedings are incomplete. and the court has, the Privy Council has indicated that they must take place in open court, so be it. Let it happen. I don't see why we have to be venturing into that in this Parliament today, and where the Minister is asking all sorts of things which are not likely to even be canvassed in those proceedings. This is pure politicking, and you should put an end to it, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, what is the point of order?
Member Chuck, allow me to just respond and be guided. The matter was a matter in the Supreme Court, and the matter went to the appeal court. And my understanding is that the appeal court has ruled, so it is final. And now it says, hold on, and now it says evidence can now be brought in open court. The substantive matter before the courts was that the evidence should be heard in private. And the
Madam
matter
Speaker, let me
went
just clarify that for you. It was a procedure. Chill out. Madam Speaker, it was a procedural appeal.
Point of procedure.
It was a
the leader of the opposition cannot stand unless he has caught the eye of the Speaker. And to my best knowledge, the Speaker was still speaking when you stood up. And she has not given you the right to speak. Therefore, you are contravening the standing orders, and I respectfully urge. In any case, you ought not to be standing while I have moved the point of order. You must be seated. So sit down.
You did not say.
Sit down.
You did not say point of order. You did not say point of order. You interrupted me. You interrupted me, and you didn't raise. You didn't say on a point of order.
On a point of order.
That's what you should say.
On a point of order, the member yields. On a point of order, Madam Speaker, the member yields, and that means he takes his seat. No. You were standing while I was speaking. You were standing while I was speaking.
You did not rise on a point of order. You did not follow the procedure.
Madam Speaker, I make the point that you have not completed your comment, nor did you catch the eye of the member, and therefore he ought not to have been on his feet then. So may you proceed, Madam Speaker.
I had finished saying, hold a minute, I had finished saying, to my mind, that the facts that are being spoken by the minister are correct. They are correct. There is no misleading of what has taken place. He is merely referring to a public ruling of the appeal court, the Privy Council, that the evidence that is required ought not to be given in private. It must be done publicly. The facts to which he speaks are public knowledge that were raised before the Jamaican Supreme Court, and the case came to a halt when the point was taken that the evidence was to be given in private. On that front, the People's National Party appealed to the Privy Council, and the Privy Council has now said, well, there was an appeal, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. The appeal, the facts were open. They were part of public knowledge in the newspapers all over. There was a point at which there was a request for evidence to be given in private. And that point was taken on appeal to the Privy Council. The Privy Council has now ruled that evidence be given in open. The facts I hear, and I stand corrected, open to your thing, being read by the Minister of Justice, are facts that have been in the public domain for the longest while. The only thing that I hear that was not in the public domain was the fact that there was the question to be answered whether you ought to give evidence in private or public. The facts being brought here, to my mind, are facts that have been in the public domain before for quite a while, and therefore, what I'm saying, Leader, you need to guide me as to what the point of order is.
Yes, ma'am, I'm happy to guide you on that. So, this was a procedural appeal, which went all the way to the Privy Council.
As to procedural, but as to whether or not...
As to whether or not the matter should be heard in open court or privately. That has been determined finally. The actual substantive proceedings are now to proceed. They have not yet happened, so the matter is not at an end. Madam Speaker, I'd appreciate it if you would give me your attention, if you would.
I'm also reading on a point of order so that I can...
My complaint is in relation to paragraphs 17 of the Minister's statement, which goes out of the realms of what the Privy Council has decided, and starts to talk about the Jamaican people want to know this and the Jamaican people want to know that. These are Dutch proceedings being brought under the MATMA, the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, and the legislation for that to enable the Dutch authorities to proceed against a Dutch company if they wish. So these are highly politicized and speculative questions that the Minister has put in his statement, and we object to them. The matter is still before the court, and it's quite improper for him to go down that path.
Madam Speaker, may I just say, it is a well-known fact that the donation was made to CCOC Association. It's a well-known fact that there was an oil lifting contract between the government of Jamaica and Trafigura. All I've done is to mention them and to ask what was behind them. Good. And moreover, Madam Speaker, there are many more questions about this Trafigura contract and the donation to the People's National Party that need to be answered. And Madam Speaker, if this Parliament wants to deal with bribery and the removal of corruption, let the facts, as the leader of the opposition says, let them fall where it may. There may well, Madam Speaker, be no bribery, no corruption. Let the facts come out so that it can so display. But, Madam Speaker, it is important that questions about what is well known in the public and any speculation, any question should be responded to by the appellants in this case. So, Madam Speaker, I urge the appellants to cooperate with the DPP so that the matter can proceed and this matter can be brought to closure. Madam Speaker, the Privy Council made it very clear that open justice is one of the features not only of a democratic society, but of a society that believes in the rule of law, and also that in open justice, everyone is protected because the public, the press, can see exactly what is happening. So, Madam Speaker, in closing, I agree with the Privy Council that there's a legitimate public interest in exposing MACMA proceedings to public scrutiny to ensure that they are properly and fairly conducted, especially since the nature of the matter is one which is capable of affecting the polity of this country. Madam Speaker, it is important that every question about any dealings, about any facts, be responded to by the appellants so that this country can bring this matter to closure. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I'm glad that the Minister didn't go down the path of reading 17 and 18 of his statement. That was an inappropriate part of his statement. As he said, we are a country governed by the rule of law, and part of that is that where there are pending matters before the courts, they're not politicized and discussed in Parliament. And that is a basic principle which was being infringed. I accept and agree that the Privy Council has ruled. Their ruling is that this matter must be dealt with in open court, that proceedings brought by a foreign country to get evidence here for proceedings that are taking place in their country against their nationals, even though those are proceedings really affecting another country, another jurisdiction, they must be held in open court. And that is what will happen, I hope, and that is, as I've gone on record and said, I support it, and I want it to be dealt with as expeditiously as possible so that we can get beyond this thing. That's all we have to say on the matter. I think it's unfortunate that this had to be the subject of a statement today, especially one that went on that particular tangent, but so be it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, the next statement will be by the Minister of Health and Wellness, the Honourable Dr. Christopher Tufton.
Madam Speaker, if I may, on a point of order. Sorry, Minister. This is, there is a pattern I've noticed, which is that the agenda that for what to take place on a given day in Parliament comes and often is amended as the week goes along, leading up to the actual meeting of the House. But then items are brought here on the day which are not on the agenda. It happened yesterday with a statement by a minister which is not on the agenda, and it's happened today with two statements by ministers which are not on the agenda. And I'd really ask the House Leader to ensure that Parliament publishes the agenda with the full content of what is to happen. This is a repeated pattern. It is not necessary, and there's no established practice for it. So, Madam Speaker, I'm asking for the House Leader to do much better. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, may I respond to that? Because it is not a practice that the statement by ministers as an agenda item is published ahead of. What is a practice is that the leader speaks with his counterpart and indicates that there is likely to be statement by ministers. And therefore, that proceeding normally follows. In the event of the meetings happening in the way that they did, we have a meeting yesterday and then one today, it is true. In this particular occasion, we didn't have an opportunity to speak opposition leader on the matter. But it is not a matter of course or practice, because we do communicate, and in fairness, we know essentially what is being taken the day before. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, let me just say that the leader of government business and myself attempt to work together to manage the business. No, we attempt to work together. We attempt to work together to manage the business of the House. On occasion, as of today, yesterday, and today, we spoke. And yesterday, I can understand because there were a series of meetings, and when we arrived in the House, it was then I had an inkling that a statement would be made by the Prime Minister that went on for over an hour. We had no idea, no notice of that. Today, we spoke earlier, and there was an indication that when I asked about Minister Tufton speaking, there was an indication that he might be making a statement. We had no indication about the member from the Minister of Justice, making a statement today. And so the opposition leader is quite correct in that we ought not to go down a path and to create an environment in which statements of importance are made and there's no inkling that these statements are coming, and we ought to do better than that.
Madam Speaker, I think, Madam Speaker, I think that the member appreciates the point that there is no compulsion, there is no requirement even that ahead of time this information be provided, because a minister can make a statement to the House at any point. But as a matter of practice, we do communicate, and I do ensure that the information is passed to him. And I take exemption to the word attempt. And if indeed the member is saying we attempt, then I am concerned about the level of interaction that we have been having, which I honestly think has been quite cordial and well over the last few months that we have been working together.
I think, Madam Speaker, the issue is not the cordiality of the engagement. It's been very cordial. What I would prefer is that some prior notice be given, particularly a matter of importance, of national importance.
We don't want to prolong this because we do have a situation. But this particular case today has resulted from the fact that the House has met for 2 days and they were very involved. Yesterday was particularly involved, as the member indeed indicated. And this morning we were notified that the two ministers intended to speak. And so therefore, I understand in the relation that we've had that I might have been able to say to you when we arrived here, it would not have made any material difference in terms of the extent of preparation if that's the argument that you're putting. However, I never mentioned it to you this morning. But this is not the norm. This is not the norm.
Thank you. I think that brings to a close. The opposition is entitled to know, and both opposition and government leaders share a good relationship, and I hear the opposition government leader saying he will endeavor to do what is required of him. Thank you very much. Dr. Tufton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to firstly take this opportunity, and I believe I do so. From long ago.
Tufton, the Minister of Health. The health of our nation is very important. Let us hear what is happening.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks to my colleagues. Madam Speaker, I take the opportunity, I believe, on behalf of not just myself, but this House, and certainly the entire health family, to express our condolences to the family and friends of Mr. Michael Sharp, who, along with over 700 other Jamaicans, have experienced the worst outcome of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Sharp, and I crave your indulgence to say, have engaged in many fora where I have been present, and it has been a pleasure to engage him on many issues affecting our nation. A journalist of the highest order and fearless in his pursuit of truth, the nation will miss him, and the contribution he has made will undoubtedly rebound to the upliftment of the country. And I say on our behalf, may his soul rest in eternal peace and light perpetually shine on him. Madam Speaker, I must also take the opportunity in giving an update on the COVID-19 response here in Jamaica to advise those members of the public who are so inclined or motivated to refrain from spreading false information and, worse, verbally attacking healthcare workers who have done their jobs to date with distinction. Let me say, Madam Speaker, that the anti-vax movement is alive and active, and with each day we do experience in public health whether through cyberspace or otherwise, acts of verbal attacks, even threats in some cases, because of the work that the government, the public health team, with the support of all of us here in this parliament, are doing to overcome this COVID-19 threat. The anti-vax movement, I have personally received hate mails, and many others have. And in most recent times, the issues around persons who have died having taken the AstraZeneca vaccine, and the links between the vaccine and death have featured prominently with a certain degree of venom by those who are looking for a reason to promote the anti-vaccine movement. And I want to just ask persons to desist and all well-thinking Jamaicans to condemn those efforts and support the efforts of our public health team. Today, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Health and Wellness announced an additional 83 new cases identified in the last 24 hours, as well as, and unfortunately so, 6 new deaths that were classified as being caused by COVID-19. However, based on our epidemiological assessment, there is some movement in the right direction as it relates to the degree of spread, hospitalization, and those who have been worst affected from this pandemic, this virus. Our reproductive rate over the last 4 weeks, Madam Speaker, have moved from 1.3% to 0.9, I should say, from 1.3 to 0.9. This really means that we are moving in a direction where the spread of the virus is decreasing or declining, and below 1, not ideally where we want it to be, we would like it to be somewhere in the region of 0.7, but certainly going below 1 means the spread, the rate of spread that each person with COVID is responsible for is at a rate that is less than the capacity to double or increase the extent of the virus beyond our capacities currently. In other words, we are seeing a declining rate of spread, which is a very positive development. Our positivity rate has fallen from as high as 42%, and today we reported a 15.7%. That's a significant decline over time. And this represents, Madam Speaker, the lowest positivity rate in over 8 weeks. And we certainly hope that this will continue, given the extent and the impact of the surge that we have had in recent times. This reduction in the number of cases is due in the main to the many sacrifices that we have made as a country, and of course the leadership of the government, led of course by Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Sacrifices, however, Madam Speaker, at the individual level, the family level, the community and organizations, sacrifices by all. These sacrifices have resulted in many hardships, we understand, for the men and women who have had to give up their livelihoods and bear the economic brunt of lockdowns or other forms of restrictions and movement. And I have to say, on behalf of the entire government and the Ministry of Health and Wellness team who have been in the field championing the response, that we understand the sacrifices, and we say thanks to the Jamaican people for those. We should also appreciate that these sacrifices have meant that many lives have been saved. And this is quite important. It's always an issue of balancing lives and livelihood. But at the end of the day, life has such finality, or the loss of a life, that it is so important to ensure that priority, as this government has done, is given to saving lives. Based on the evidence of our surveillance, there is a direct and positive correlation between the number of cases reported positivity rates, hospitalization, and death. It is to be noted that in February, at the height of our recent surge, hospitalization and COVID-19 beds reached a high of over 60% or 57% over capacity, meaning 157%, Madam Speaker. And what that means in practical terms is that we had to make space in an already cramped situation to house persons who were positive. In some instances, breaching the protocols around distance between beds to facilitate persons who needed a bed and needed the type of care only given in a hospital setting. Our ability to provide oxygen to the many persons admitted was significantly challenged, as you know, and due to the quick efforts of persons in facilities, we were able to maintain service levels within these facilities. We must remember as well the prolonged waits at health facilities and the fact that the ministry has had to explain our staffing complement or expand our staffing complement and bed capacity to meet the needs of the increasing numbers. It must be noted as well that many persons who required admission were more sick and had more severe forms of illnesses that required more complex treatment and longer stays in health facilities. So, Madam Speaker and colleagues, there are consequences to this COVID-19 spread and the higher positivity rates and the higher reproductive rates, and the response, therefore, even with the inconveniences to all of us, are well worth it because lives are at stake. Madam Speaker, we are pleased with the response of Jamaicans to the recent vaccination blitz exercise, where we saw some 83,000 Jamaicans over a 4.5-day period getting vaccinated. And this is coming from a target that was set of some 75,000 persons. The health team, Madam Speaker, provided critical and extended work in order to reach this target. And again, I want to, on your behalf, give them all the commendations that they deserve. Of the total persons seen during that vaccination blitz, approximately 44% were persons 60 years and older. Clinically, this is also a good sign. From a sociological perspective, the way in which families in multiple generations showed up at the sites across the country and waited patiently, Madam Speaker, is also very important and worth noting. It is a sign, I believe anyway, that Jamaicans have coalesced around this effort at responding to COVID-19 and are willing to play their part. And this is good for the country, and it shows the unity of purpose which we must promote. I want to thank, Madam Speaker, the entities and persons who contributed to attaining the record of the largest number of Jamaicans vaccinated in one day. On Monday, April 12, 2021, 26,961 individuals were vaccinated. A record, I am told, in the history of immunization in Jamaica. I want to specially mention those who have made this possible, starting with sourcing the vaccines. Clearly, the support of the Cabinet of Jamaica, but in particular, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Minister Johnson Smith, the National Health Fund, the African Medical Supply Platform, who were instrumental in acquiring and shipping the vaccines to Jamaica. And I want to also place on record our thanks to the government and people of South Africa, who provided the 75,000 doses as a gift. We thank you all for your efforts, which has allowed us to have provided some 7% of the target population with the first dose of vaccines as a response to COVID-19. Based on the recent review by the international press, the CNN included, the pace of vaccination across the world, when compared, Madam Speaker, suggests that we still have some ways to go. We are 7% of the targeted population, 5% of the overall population. However, we have achieved bragging rights, if you will, for the country in the world that has been able to achieve the fastest immunization effort within a particular period of time. Some 5% of our population in just 37 days. And Madam Speaker, this demonstrates the fixity of purpose and commitment by not just the health team, but the JDF, the JCF, and other support staff who have really worked hard to make this happen. The achievement shows that the health system has the capacity to vaccinate the population, and so we must now turn to the vexing issue of supplies. Jamaica, like other developing countries, Madam Speaker, across the globe, still suffer from the lack of access and certainty around vaccines. Many manufacturers are still not able to meet their supply quota and are struggling due to the lack of ingredients to make sufficient vaccines. Madam Speaker, according to the World Health Organization statistics, only 6.51% of the world's population has been vaccinated with at least one dose. From our targeted population, we're at 7%, so we are just above that overall number. However, and in keeping with the theme of vaccine nationalism, 40% of the developed world have had their at least first dose of vaccines applied. This, Madam Speaker, demonstrates the significant inequity in terms of the application of vaccines as a critical response to COVID-19 globally. It also, Madam Speaker, highlights a major risk that we face, that we should use our voices both locally and internationally to highlight. Virologists understand and know that the longer the presence of a virus within a population and the more it infects, the greater the possibility for mutation. Therefore, Madam Speaker, complex and significant mutations have already been identified in many populations in the world.
The Speaker's time has expired. House Leader?
10 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the member's time be extended sufficiently for him to finish the statement.
Question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister.
Madam Speaker, thank you, and thanks to my colleagues. Madam Speaker, this is an important point that is worthy of note and a cause that is worthy to be championed, and this as it relates to the inequity in the distribution of vaccines. The slow rate of vaccination can result in higher rates of mutation and the possibility of low efficacy rates for vaccines that have already been administered. And this is advocated by the scientists and more recently by the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros. And it is something that we have to manage carefully. And as we look across the world, we see where variant strains of the virus are popping up. And that is an area that we have to manage even while we seek to source vaccines, but also champion the cause of vaccine equity across the globe. Strategically, Jamaica has sought to ensure the protection of our population through the testing for the different strains within our population. Based on the information provided, we have been notified of the presence of the UK strain, which has resulted in our implementation of the travel restrictions on the United Kingdom. At this time, there is no evidence that this strain has become the most dominant strain in the population, but we know that the strain is present. The Ministry of Health and Wellness continues to send samples to CARFA to complete assessment. However, the results, unfortunately, can be lengthy, and we are therefore required to again look to build capacity within country to complete genomic testing so that we can screen for variants of the virus within the population. I wish to acknowledge at this point the kind support of the Centers for Disease Control, Madam Speaker, and the government of the United States for their support for the financing of equipment for the National Public Health Lab to do testing. Additional technical support is being provided in the capacity development of local staff in conducting similar testing, and the analysis of results of decision making. We are benefiting, Madam Speaker, to the tune of some $350,000 US, and we expect to do work in this area over the next 3 to 4 months. This will allow us the capacity, Madam Speaker, to do our own testing, particularly around variant strains. Madam Speaker, the threat of vaccine nationalism must be confronted, and I join the Honourable Prime Minister Andrew Holness in stating that as developing countries, we must ensure that we advocate for the release of pent-up supplies and for there to be equity in the distribution of vaccines, especially to those countries with limited resources. COVAX has been a very useful facility, Madam Speaker, in ensuring some access. We acknowledge the work of the Gavi Foundation, the WHO, and PAHO in supporting this facility and ensuring that countries have access to safe vaccines. To date, Jamaica, however, has received only 14,600 doses through this facility. And while it is true that we are slated to receive an additional 55,000 doses over the next week or so, it is still far short of the 247,000 doses, approximately, that we were scheduled to receive by the end of April 2021. As stated, Madam Speaker, the success of our Blitz operation has shown that we have the capacity to administer the vaccines in a safe and efficient manner, and that there is significant demand within the population for the vaccines. And the research which we had done prior to the Blitz period had shown some 40% of the population willing to take and another 30% undecided, and the balance indicating hesitancy. I think we can revise that based on what we have seen with the Blitz sessions. At this juncture, Madam Speaker, I wish to recognize, beyond whom I've already recognized, the work of our local team, in particular members of Parliament and councillors across the country who participated in this very important Blitz. Special mention I want to make, Madam Speaker, to the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, led by my colleague Minister to my right, Minister Desmond McKenzie, who was given special responsibilities to assist in the mobilization and did an excellent job at it. Based on the results of the Blitz, the process worked. Many individuals were able to access vaccination services through the intervention, and this is worthy of recognition and celebration. Madam Speaker, with the current state of vaccine supply, the government is expecting COVAX to make a promised delivery in the next 10 days or less. Once these vaccines are delivered, the ministry will continue our vaccination program at the level 1 implementation stage. This is very important to explain. What it means is that vaccination will be done at the local health centers in parishes. No Blitz operations will or can be done until additional supplies are received, Madam Speaker, in May. We anticipate additional supplies sometime around mid-May of 2021. Accordingly, starting Monday, April 26, 2021, vaccinations will be done for all phase 1 persons by appointment only. We're returning, Madam Speaker, prior to the Blitz, to the original scheduling as outlined in our vaccination plan, except that we are taking persons 60 years and older who are the vulnerable within the population based on comorbidities and age, as well as the other categories that came before them, to the extent that they have not been vaccinated: healthcare workers, JDF, JCF, Jamaica Fire Brigade, PICA, Jamaica Customs. We understand and appreciate the anxiety among our teachers and tourism workers to continue the vaccination program so that as a country we can restart our education system and our critical economic sectors. However, at this time, until we can get the specific information on the next delivery, in the judgment of the technical clinical team, they believe it is best to focus on those most vulnerable at this time, as I have defined earlier. So persons on this priority list, 60 years and older, JDF, JCF, Jamaica Fire Brigade, PICA, and Jamaica Customs are encouraged to use the web portal at www.moh.gov.jm to make appointment, or call 888-1-LOVE to make such arrangements. Madam Speaker, it is also important that I make note of the fact that of the persons that have received the vaccines, none have been fully inoculated, none have gotten their second dose, to be simplistic, and that second dose is very, very important. And I'm not going to go into the clinical explanation, just appreciate what I'm saying. It's important once you have gotten one to get the second, given that the AstraZeneca is the only one we're administering. The only other one in the market that requires only one jab or one dose is the Johnson & Johnson, which we do not have here. Having said that, Madam Speaker, and given the time constraints or restraints as to dose 1 to dose 2, we have to now make provisions to provide the second dose to those persons who got the first dose, using the certainty of the shipment that we are getting, hopefully in 10 days or less. There are approximately 40,000 Jamaicans who receive their first dose who would be due for their second dose in the month of May. And so, Madam Speaker, the intention is to secure from that 55,000, 40,000. We currently have approximately 15 or so, 15,000 in storage, so we would have anywhere between 28 and 30,000 additional, which we will apply based on the appointment system that I have just outlined. So we are limited by the amounts that we have, but we do not want those persons who would be due a second dose in May to miss that critical opportunity to give them what they need. I want to say, Madam Speaker, that for those persons who may be asking, how do I get the second dose? Well, you are going to be contacted. We have a database with that information. You will get a text on your phone. You have a card that was given when you received the first dose, which gives you the date, and therefore you should know if you inquire based on that card. But beyond that, you could call to inquire the 8881-LOVE number, or visit the very same facility where you got the first dose during that early stage, and we will give you the information and apply the appropriate second dosage. Madam Speaker, just to continue to encourage those who have had their first dose, it is not a license to act in defiance of the protocol. It's very important that we wear the mask, we physical distance, and we sanitize. And as we have seen, as unfortunate as it is, there are persons who die from COVID having had their first dose of the vaccine. And this has led to a lot of misunderstandings and misinterpretations and rumors and other things which I commented on earlier. So it is important that we recognize that the first dose does not prevent you from getting COVID or having a severe case, which is why it's important to maintain the protocol. Madam Speaker, in closing, over 135,000 Jamaicans who have received the first dose of the COVID vaccine all have information on the date, as said earlier, and we will now work with them in the month of May, starting on, I think, the first week, the end of the first week of May, to apply the second dosage. We will continue our efforts to secure more vaccines. There are a number of very positive leads that we're pursuing. There is some evidence that the facilities that we have signed up with, including COVAX, will see additional amounts in May, We have decided to take the position not to state a date until we have better particulars. But we are sure that we will get an additional 55,000 over the next 10 days or less. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Maybe not. Maybe not.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we too on this side would like to extend our condolences to the 733 Jamaicans who have died so far as a consequence of COVID that have been officially recorded, and to the family and friends of our friend as well, friend of Jamaica, Michael Sharp, having made a transition, but also the many others too who have made that. Madam Speaker, I share with the Minister in his concern about the verbal abuse of health workers. It is real, and it's something that I think that all of us here should, by example, coalesce around fighting that abuse of our health workers, because indeed they have been the ones who have made things possible for what is happening now in this country. And irrespective of how much funding the government has provided for the program, if these dedicated workers had not been out there doing what they have been trained to do and going beyond the call of duty, the reality is that probably more than 732 Jamaicans would have succumbed to COVID-19. I want, at the start, Madam Speaker, to continue to encourage our Jamaicans to observe the protocols. And there seems to be a tendency for many of our people not to want to observe the protocols of mask wearing, which is the most important one, if I may say. And too often we go out in the wayside, on the street, in the communities, and we see people wearing masks, but the vast majority of them are not. And for some of those who are wearing it, they are wearing it as style and fashion, under the cheek, below the nose, and they say they are wearing a mask. It reminds me, Madam Speaker, that, all right, let's not go there. Now, we continue to encourage, Madam Speaker, the continued observing of the protocols in the country. And we will also appeal to the government, and I see the Minister of Finance here. But one of the places where we see that breach that is most egregious is in the government agencies, the tax offices, where people go to pay their taxes. And despite the fact that there's a recommendation to pay online, we still see the bungling that occur. You only have to drive down on Old Hope Road, on Constant Spring Road, to see D and G, to see the numbers of persons gathered out there and in a line, not observing the 6 feet protocol outside, but inside there are the markers for them to do that. Madam Speaker, the Minister mentioned that the positivity rate is going down, and he trumpeted the fact that, and can I use that word, Minister, trumpeted? The fact that 15.7% was yesterday's date numbers. The reality, though, is that in as much as we welcome the fact that it's 15.7% yesterday, the Minister has been at pains to point out many times in the past that this is just a snapshot, and a weekly positivity rate is a better index of what we should be looking at. And we are still, for the past 7 days, still having a positivity rate of 20%. The matter inclusive of yesterday. And that is the best index to assess where we are going. And of course, we are heartened by the fact that it has come down from the low 30s as an average for the week to where it is now. But there's a concern, Madam Speaker, and the concern that most Jamaicans have, and the concern that many health professionals have, and the concern that many scientists have, is that the Ministry of Health has not been doing sufficient testing of samples. And I say that against the background that we have seen that for the first 3 weeks in March, we have an average daily of around 1,500 tests. The country has a capacity to do PCR of upwards of 4,000 tests per day. For the first 3 weeks in this month, we have been hovering around 700-800 per day, average 700 per day. And one day we went as far as, and I'm not seeing today's figures in its totality yet, but yesterday was 252. And that runs contrary to the World Health Recommendation Guidelines, which clearly state, and the Minister mentioned the Director General in his presentation here, but the Director General has been at the forefront of asking member nations and countries across the world to increase testing. Testing is the only way scientifically that you're going to know what is happening. And the fact is, Madam Speaker, that the Minister has indicated and the Prime Minister said just as well that we don't need to do as much testing as we do because we're getting the same information that we need. Now, that is false. The World Health Organization, as part of their guidelines, suggests that in a high positivity rate environment, and everybody is aiming to go below 5%, in a high positive rate environment, you should be testing 10 to 30 times the number of tests as per positive tests that you're getting. So based on the fact that we are getting those numbers, we should be testing 10 to 30 times the numbers of samples out there to see where we're going. And the other thing about the positivity rate too, Madam Speaker, is that, or the testing, is that when you test, you need to get back results quickly so that you can plan appropriately, so that people can get an idea as to where they are, their status, and where and what measures need to be done. And also for the planners, which is the Ministry of Health, to have a fair idea as to where to go. Now, we have seen the numbers coming down, Madam Speaker, but we have seen the deaths still remaining consistently high. 41 for the past 7 days, 51 for the 7 days before that, 26 during the Easter weekend, 42 prior to that, and 37 prior to that per week. Now, we are seeing low numbers, and yes, we have a lag in terms of the numbers of testing and the mortalities. But the reality, Madam Speaker, is that we...
Member.
Prime Minister.
We don't reach here for 10 to 8
Madam.
Sufficient to come, please.
With 5 minutes.
No, 7.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the member's time be extended to allow him to conclude his statement.
Thank you.
The question before the House is that the member's time be extended sufficiently to enable him to complete his presentation. Go ahead, Member Bakaya.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. And I am happy that the Honourable Minister of Local Government also contributed to allowing me to speak, because there's a section that I want to thank him for his efforts as well. Madam Speaker, the death rates, although we know there's a lag period, there's some concern about the numbers that are dying. And the reality is that if you do not test early and advise people of their status, there is a tendency for people to be at home with complications, with symptoms, and not seeking medical attention early. And that might be one of the consequences of not giving the results as early as they ought to, and consequently people arriving at hospital in states which are dire, and the medical personnel might not be able to assist in saving their lives. Madam Speaker, we're happy to note that the bed capacity is no longer so much of a challenge at this particular juncture. But the the reality is that we need to know that persons are getting, as I said before, their status at an earlier level, at an earlier time, so that the government can plan and they can plan. Now, commendations were given to persons who were involved in the vaccine blitz. And, Madam Speaker, I have been, and the Minister has been on public television recognizing the efforts of many persons out there, including mine. But I want to really thank wholeheartedly all the Jamaicans who came out and the workers, and for the seamless way it was done by our health workers and the team. And I want to commend them for that. Now, Madam Speaker, we note yesterday in the newspaper, or was it today, a statement by the Chairman of the National Health Fund in terms of the vaccine supply and availability internationally and Jamaica's commitment. I want to know, Minister, has the government left that solely to the National Health Fund to be in charge of procurement? Because that particular statement, in as much as it is informing the country as to where we are, we'd like to know if that is the only avenue through which the government is actively seeking to get vaccines. The numbers and the record you speak of, Minister, in Jamaica, achieving that amount of vaccine in one single day, vaccination in a particular single day, gives us 5% of the population vaccinated and 7% of the target that we want to be vaccinated, which is just over $1.9 million to get 1.9 million persons to get herd immunity. But we are still, in terms of rate of vaccination, the lowest in the Caribbean, and we understand that, yes, part of that too is due to the shortage of vaccines worldwide. We still, at this point, Minister, will encourage the government to continue those bilateral engagements to see whether, when they are approved by WHO, that Jamaica will still be in the line to get vaccines. Because, as you have said in your missive here, the reality is that the entire world, and particularly developing countries, are facing some challenges. Minister, you spoke about variant and you spoke about the ability of variant as a scientific fact to develop if we have a slow vaccination performance. The reality too, Minister, is that whereas that is true, if we have a non-testing and a rapid idea of the genetic variation that is occurring, i.e. the variants that are here, then certainly it is going to create the same challenge as a low vaccination rate. So we need to know what is the report coming out of CARFA for that 50 samples that have been sent for some time now. Secondly, we also need to know, Minister, that as was said by the Prime Minister some weeks ago, that there were engagements of private laboratories in the States, United States, in Florida, to see whether Jamaica could access those facilities to have genomic sequencing done to see if whatever variants are here. We have been told about the British variant. We have not been told of any others. And unless we know what we are dealing with, vaccination might not be putting us in the right direction, because we were the beneficiary of the 75,000 vaccines from South Africa, under the African Medical Supply Platform. But that was simply because AstraZeneca was no longer efficacious for the South African variant of the vaccine. Now, it is for that reason why we want to know, and we need to know, and we need to know quickly, so that those same health planners can determine what is best for us as a country in terms of our vaccination protocol. Now, I'm happy that the CDC and the U.S. government have indicated that they're going to give the government of Jamaica some support with the provision of this genomic sequencing machine. And it is our wish, Madam Speaker, we'd like to thank them, our wish that that is done quickly within the time that has been indicated. Now, Madam Speaker, I said that, yes, we want to thank the workers and we want to thank the Minister of Local Government too. Now, Minister, there's a discrepancy in your, in your statement, and it reads accordingly, Monday, April 26th, vaccination will be done for all phase 1 persons by appointment. I might understand that they're going to start on the 26th of April, or the appointments are going to start on that day. Because recall, we gave our first vaccination on the 10th of March. And if you take it to the 8 weeks, it would be about the first week in May that those vaccines would be given, although in the latter part of your statement, you said early May as well. So that discrepancy needs to be sorted out. But whilst you're on that point, Minister, there are new studies that are coming out which suggest that AstraZeneca gives you, the client, the patient, the individual, a better protection if it is given 12 weeks, the second dose after the first dose, instead of the customary 8 weeks. What is the position of the Jamaican government and the Ministry of Health where that is concerned? So, Madam Speaker, we have, whilst we welcome the position here, we still have concerns about the availability of vaccines. We still have concerns about what efforts the government is making in trying to procure more for the country. We still have concerns about the testing, the number of testing. We have concerns about the number of deaths. And Minister, I'm going to say it as I said it last week when the Prime Minister spoke. What is the government's position on ivermectin? Each day we are seeing new studies which are indicating of the efficacious nature of that particular drug. I know the ministry has started some process, but it needs to be speeded up in trying to make it available so that medical doctors can, with the consent of their patients, can start to use it. I spoke to the fact that the price is going up exorbitantly. It's a very cheap drug, but it's been sold now for upwards of $3,000 per tablet. And Minister, that is simply because people on the black market are bringing it into the country, and demand and supply is causing that to happen. So we need to have a clear position on that, Minister. And as I said to the Prime Minister last week, sometimes we need to be guided by the WHO, but sometimes as a country, we need to look at our country priorities and determine, based on the science that we have, based on the local scientists that we have, based on the local expertise we have, make some decisions that might run contrary to WHO, but we find are for the benefit of the people of this country. We have too many persons, Madam Speaker, who have served internationally, who are renowned internationally in terms of being eminent scientists, who can give advice to the country, who can give advice to the government. And finally, Madam Speaker, on that same vein, I'm calling on the Minister and the government to expand the group of advisors that the Ministry of Health has in terms of this COVID intervention and the COVID fight. Expand it. Get more people who have more knowledge into this, Madam Speaker, and support the team that's at the Ministry of Health and those teams that you're calling on, because there are many persons out there who can assist in helping this country to combat that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Thanks to the member for his comments and questions. I'll be... What? Madam Speaker, just to say that I agree with the member that a 7-day average does give a more accurate reading on the trend, and we do watch trends, not just a snapshot of a moment in time. But as you have correctly pointed out also, the trend is suggesting a 20% now as opposed to a 30+%. So we are moving in the right direction, and it's an indication that the steps that the government has taken have worked. So I'll say no more than that, but to encourage the population to continue to abide by those protocols. As it relates to the vaccination blitz, I join with you. We thank the population and those who have been involved. But, I really want to give a special thanks to the team who crafted the strategy that was tabled here representing the vaccine plan. It involved multiple stakeholders, the JDF, the JCF, and so on. But putting that plan together to ensure its smooth flow required a lot of capacity and a lot of time and effort. So I want to really recognize the permanent secretary, the chief medical officer. There's a small team that really did a lot of work. And that organization, I think, proved to be very successful, including the mobilization, of course. I also want to mention, I didn't in the first go around, my colleague Minister Cuthbert Finn, who was on the road helping to mobilize, and Senator Campbell Rodriguez, who also volunteered to assist in the mobilization and was given particular responsibilities to go out on the road. It shows that as political organization, both PNP, JLP, we can mobilize people. And in this instance, it was the best approach to getting the people out and to achieving vaccine equity. Very important, because, Madam Speaker, up to the Blitz session, I'm prepared to say we did not have as much persons from certain socioeconomic groups, but our members of parliament and councillors really reached out and went into these communities, and that's a very positive thing in keeping with the goal. On the issue of testing, which was you spent some time on, member, I'm prepared to assess, as we do on an ongoing basis, why the testing levels go up and down. In this instance, I have inquired, and I was told that for a number of reasons, the long holiday period contributed to low testing. The sort of focus on the Blitz had contributed also to lower levels in this instance. There are some downtimes periodically for various other reasons, but I do maintain that the opportunities for testing have improved in terms of the facilities, public facilities around the country that as a routine would test cases with particular symptoms. We have not turned away anyone. So it really now, to the extent that we have less tests being administered, has really been a function of persons either wanting to be tested or having been requested for a test do not turn up. I'm told that that is the case. I need to get some better statistics on that. And then bear in mind, too, that the private space is available. We have now sanctioned labs to do testing. So anyone who is willing, of course, and can afford to pay can go and do testing. But we do agree that it's important. But when you have community spread, the protocols can be more important. I still maintain that position because the virus is everywhere. But we can discuss more on that later on. On the issue of the NHF's efforts, referencing, of course, the release or the coverage in one of today's media, the NHF is only one of several functionaries in securing vaccines. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade is a major player in those efforts. Minister Johnson Smith has provided excellent leadership in that regard. The Cabinet of Jamaica discusses the particular areas of possibilities. The Prime Minister himself has been involved in the process, both directly and indirectly. And at the Ministry, of course, we provide ongoing guidance. What the NHF does, however, in keeping with the need to just have one source doing the procurement, the storage, the logistics management, the NHF has been given that responsibility, and the chairman is integral to that, as well as the operational managers. In terms of variant strain, we are as concerned about the variant strain, which is why I mentioned it. The issue of not having enough vaccines, I hope the country will come to terms with the realities of the global context. So it's not for a lack of effort on our part. In keeping with the threat of variant strains, as I said earlier, we are now investing in equipment to do our own testing. And I mentioned that. So that should demonstrate our commitment to addressing that cause. And then I probably wouldn't normally do this, but I want to read very short, with your permission, Madam Speaker, a release from the makers of ivermectin, because I know this has been a very controversial issue, well talked about nationally, and it's not that we have not discussed it within the ministry and tried to find a way to accommodate, and some accommodation has been given. But this is coming from Merck, a statement on ivermectin used during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is dated the 4th of February 2011. And this is how we're guided. We're guided by the science, and we have to be guided by those who are directly involved, and in this case, the very manufacturer. And it says, known as MSD outside of the United States and Canada, today affirmed, this is Merck, of course, its position regarding the use of ivermectin during the COVID-19 pandemic. Company scientists continue to carefully examine the findings of all available and emerging studies of ivermectin for the treatment of COVID-19 for evidence of efficacy and safety. It is important to note that to date, our analysis has identified, 1, no scientific basis for a potential therapeutic effect against COVID-19 from preclinical studies. 2, no meaningful evidence for clinical activity or clinical efficacy in patients with COVID-19 disease. And thirdly, a concerning lack of safety data in the majority of these studies. And it goes on finally to say, we do not believe that the data available support the safety and efficacy of ivermectin beyond the doses and populations indicated in the regulatory agency approved prescribing information. This is coming from the manufacturers. Now, you reference the WHO and the WHO's position. And the truth is, we gather sources, we gather information from multiple sources. What I'm saying to you is we have to be, as you know, you're a clinician. In the practice of clinical science, unlike in the practice of, let's say, money management, we have to be extra conservative, because it's not a matter of loss or gain of profits in this with this comparison. It's about lives.
Mr.
And this is the challenge that we face as it relates to this particular drug. Yes.
I am aware of thank you, Madam Speaker, of the report or the statement coming from Merck Sharp, who were the originators of it. That particular statement, if you read it, Minister, and see where the areas that it speaks to is United States and Canada, they are guided, and Merck has to put out the statement simply to protect its bottom line in terms of its profitability and the potential for suit. The reality is that there are other manufacturers, and the reality is that there are many studies out there which point to it. So whether we are going to agree with Merck Sharp Dome in terms of whether the advisory is not to or to allow it, the simple thing I'm asking, Minister, is for the ministry to speed up the process of getting the drug into the country so that that decision can be made, even though we have the health authorities. And you've gone as far as to say, Minister, that we are going to allow ivermectin to come in, and clinicians can decide with consent of their patients whether they'd want to use it. To have it here available so that it can be used and cheaply obtained before the price, as we have seen it going up, right? It might not be what MSD wants, Merck Sharp Dome wants, in terms of their to be held liable for COVID management, to say, okay, it did not get my relatives, so I'm going to sue the country. But let's have it here. That's the only point I'm making.
I want to, if I may, just clarify that the date on this is not 2011, just for the record. It's actually 2021, so that's February 2021. Madam Speaker, quickly, I mean, I'm not suggesting that this communique represents a final position on our part as public health, but it has to inform how we approach the process. because you are suggesting that Merck is protecting themselves, which they have all right to do. But as a government, we have a greater responsibility to the Jamaican people and how we approach treatment of a particular threat that could make the difference between life and death. And what I have done is advise the University of the West Indies to have discussions with the NHF and the chief medical officer to look at the possibility or to prepare some sort of a pilot to be able to administer the drug. Having said that, private companies can apply and can secure the distribution rights, and once they have that, they can bring the drug in. What we believe is our obligation is that the country is very aware of the reports and the purpose of the drug, so that persons can make informed decisions. I don't want the impression to be given that somehow we are preventing a treatment that could otherwise benefit the population without having provided all the information. Thank you, Madam.
Madam Speaker, no.
Are you going to be brief?
Very brief. Just one question the minister didn't answer. The discrepancy with the vaccination resumption in terms of the dates and the 8th week as opposed to the 12th week. What's the consideration then? And the fact that you said on the 26th of
All right, so I'm told that the online registration will be up on Friday. So we intend to begin to administer vaccines on Monday. And that I appreciate that question because it wasn't in my statement and it's worth clarity. On the issue of the 8 as opposed to 12 weeks, again, it's an ongoing issue. I saw that release also, one study. As you know, member, there are several studies out there. So I have to depend on the clinical team to advise accordingly. I will consult, and we have another place that we meet here. I will provide that information.
Thank you. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today is a copy of Ministry Paper number 26 of 2021 and Annual Report of the National Health Fund for the year 2019-2020.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move to introduce and have read the first time a bill shortly entitled the Judicature Appellate Jurisdiction Amendment Act 2021 and a bill shortly entitled the Judicature Parish Courts Amendment Act 2021. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to introduce the bills, have them read the first time, and give notice of their second reading.
Madam Speaker, if I may just inquire of the Minister. I noticed that these are two companion bills, but I only see one of them.
You should have two.
I haven't seen the other one.
Well, maybe it is a mix-up, but there is one entitled...
We have the one for the parish court, but not for the Supreme Court.
Oh yes, the appellate jurisdiction. You can have my copy. Give the... But I think there's mix-up because we got enough copies of both to be circulated properly.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, I beg to give notice at the next meeting of the House, he will move to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Limited Liabilities Companies Act 2021.
Questions and answers to questions. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Judicature Appellate Jurisdiction Amendment Act 2021 and a bill shortly entitled the Judicature Parish Courts Amendment Act 2021 and give notice of their second reading.
The question is that the standing orders be suspended to enable the Minister to introduce and have read a first time a bill shortly entitled the Judicature Appellate Jurisdiction Amendment Act 2021 and a bill shortly entitled the Judicature Parish Courts Amendment Act 2021 and give notice of their second reading. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk.
A bill shortly entitled the Judicature Appellate Jurisdiction Amendment Act 2021 and a bill shortly entitled the Judicature Parish Courts Amendment Act 2021 read a first time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bills. And just to inform the House, Madam Speaker, these bills will remain on the table of the House for the better part of 2-3 weeks, at which point we will invite the public, stakeholders, to examine and comment on these bills. They're generally known as the prosecution right of appeal, and therefore we would want at least a vast majority of people to buy into these bills, to make comments, make suggestions, so that these bills can be tabled and debated and accepted generally across the island. So we're not going to debate them for some time, Madam Speaker, 2-3 weeks before, so give the public and stakeholders the opportunity to comment.
Public business.
Madam Speaker, the matter for public business is the continuation of the sectoral debate. And the Speaker today will be the member from East Kingston and Port Royal, Mr. Phillip Paulwell.
Mr. Paulwell.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to contribute to this sectoral debate for 2021-22 financial year. I acknowledge the support of the circle of loyal people who help sustain my work and provide helpful advice throughout the political year. So, Madam Speaker, I'd like to extend first my gratitude to my family, my staff, my councillors, Lorraine Dobson and Jacqueline Lewis. Special thanks to the leader of the opposition and, of course, the outgoing leader and my colleagues in this party, which I have the honor to be chairman, and, of course, my colleagues across the aisle for their support and understanding. My personal staff and my task force that has been involved in the work that I do as the member, as the person holding on the responsibility as Shadow Cabinet Minister for Mining and Energy. And of course, Madam Speaker, I have to pay respect to you. I believe that I'm probably the best behaving member in your chamber. And I want to salute you for the tremendous work that you're, and I'm not curry favoring as yet. And of course, I want to, much better than that member. Madam Speaker, I want to also extend thanks to the members of staff of the Parliament for the tremendous work that they do. Madam Speaker, we have had a traumatic year, and I would like to acknowledge the ever-presence of the Almighty, whose grace and mercy enfold us daily, as individuals and as a nation. I am eternally grateful for the continued faithfulness of my constituents who last September elected me for a 6th straight term to represent them in this House. They know, Madam Speaker, that when I win, they win as well. Madam Speaker, there are many projects that remain unfinished in the constituency and for which my constituents, quite understandably, get impatient from time to time. I'll just mention 2 of them today. I want to mention the Windward Road Elegant Corridor Project, which is the leg from Mountain View Avenue to Elletson Road, unfinished, and of course the Harbour View Harbour Heights Drainage Project. In relation to the Harbour View Harbour Heights project, we were again assured at this year's Standing Finance Committee that 80 million was provided for the full rehabilitation of the drainage system for that area. I'm experienced to know, Madam Speaker, that allocation and the project implementation are not the same. I'm urging that we do right by them this year. It is a catastrophe waiting to happen if we have any significant rainfall this year. Already massive losses have been incurred by residents whose homes have been damaged by previous flooding. In relation to the Windward Road project, may I remind us all that this section of my constituency represents the gateway to the capital for thousands of visitors and our nationals entering the island through the Norman Manley International Airport. We ought to do better in fulfilling the promises to create a more welcoming entrance to our city and country. My continuing vision is to see a constituency that is peaceful, with our educational institutions fully utilizing the learning technologies to achieve better results, 2 modern sports complexes, and to realize the tremendous potential to develop the Warika Hills in an environmentally friendly way. On a very positive note, Madam Speaker, I wish to announce the completion of my negotiations with Windward Development Company for the relocation of fisher folks at the China Beach Fishing Complex. The fisher folks from henceforth will no longer be regarded as squatters. They have secured a 99-year lease and license to occupy and operate their trade on a portion of the land. They know that when I win, they win. And there's a popular refrain in a song, no bastard not there again. It's a time for my constituency, and indeed the rest of Jamaica, where no squatters should there again, everyone lawful. Madam Speaker, my re-election in 2020 places me among the elder statesmen in this honorable House, having first been elected in 1997, 23 years ago, as youthful as I look. In that spirit, in that spirit, my presentation this year will focus not so much on the missed opportunities of the administration, but rather to offer solutions and presenting a vision of where Jamaica could be in energy and mining if the right actions are taken. This vision focuses on the people and placing them in a winning position. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020, it has been a period of tremendous tension, fatigue, and confusion, not only here in Jamaica, but for all governments globally. Madam Speaker, as of today, we now have about 744 Jamaicans who have died from the virus, and about 44,000 confirmed cases. To each Jamaican who has lost a loved one, my sincere condolences and prayers as you grieve. We also pray for full and speedy recovery to those who have been afflicted. To the heroes on the front lines, our doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, porters, technicians, and the many others who have faced the battle every day. We say thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Also, Madam Speaker, to the people of Jamaica, so many of you have been extraordinary in handling the inconvenience of the containment measures. You have altered your habits, deferred your plans, worked remotely, or redesigned your work methods, become teachers, and cared for each other. A big thank you. Madam Speaker, in every corner of the globe, governments are struggling through the pandemic. They are confronting serious illnesses, death, economic fallout, and continued uncertainties. However daunting, these are the times that define leaders and leadership. Good leaders have the capacity, must have the capacity to confront the challenges and to motivate the people in a crisis. It is out of this recognition, Madam Speaker, that I signal in some comments I gave on September 3, 2020, while you were being triumphal and we were licking our wounds, that we must break from the politics and work together for Jamaica's rescue, for Jamaica's sake. When we win the opportunity to serve the country as a government, the people must win, or the victory is worth nothing. Madam Speaker, the people have not been winning. The data alone tell us that something is fundamentally wrong with our current political practice when a large percentage of our citizens, for whatever reason, decided against participating in our national elections. So, Madam Speaker, let me offer my first piece of advice. We can only fix the crisis caused by the pandemic with an effective and inclusive national mobilization strategy led by the government. The government has not shown the courage nor the discipline to engage in meaningful consultations with stakeholders such as the opposition, the private sector, and of course in these matters governments feel vulnerable. But that now is not the time to be vulnerable. Now is a time to be confident and to reach across so that we can consult and work together for the good of our country. To fix the problems, all hands must be on deck, united in one common objective, the growth and development of Jamaica and a better quality of life for our citizens. They say you must never let a good crisis or let a crisis go to waste. We therefore need to follow the lead of the new United States administration in investing in the future even as we emerge from the crisis. Madam Speaker, the global forecast offered by many is still shrouded in uncertainty. In fact, recently, the IMF warned of a prolonged period of recovery for most developing countries. It is for this reason that we must adopt an attitude of boldness. We must be bold with our investment in energy infrastructure, transport infrastructure, education infrastructure, family infrastructure, infrastructure for crime fighting and other critical areas to secure Jamaica's future. This crisis provides an opportunity to reset the economy and to invest in the future. A future that gives more people an opportunity to participate in the economy. A reset that will enable all Jamaicans to feel as stakeholders. A future that gives people a real opportunity to win. Madam Speaker, sometimes we do get the feeling that there is a natural default position of the government. As we see the country where one side point the finger at the other, government pointing its finger at the opposition and to others. I think the blame game has not been helpful, and we have to stop that. Yet there are glaring examples of us working together. I think we should embrace as an excellent governing mechanism the effective use of two measures that we have used in mining and energy that I believe both have helped. I want to cite the Energy Council and the Mining Council as mechanisms that have fostered meaningful and productive cooperation. These councils have helped cement continuity and consistency in policy development and benefited the country by giving solid institutional support to these critical sectors. I commend the ministers. It's not easy for ministers to share willfully and willingly information across the aisle without any restraint. And I want to commend both the current ministers of energy and mining for, first of all, continuing the work of the Energy Council. And the minister before, the current energy minister, I have to commend her because her predecessor did not take good guidance on the matter. And you have reestablished the Energy Council comprising stakeholders from across the spectrum of persons with interest, and that is working well. The Mining Council has also been established. The minister took my advice, and it has now been established. And even in terms of relating to staff members, you no longer get a sense or the feeling that they are restricting you from access and from information. And it really helps, as you would have seen demonstrated in our Standing Finance Committee meeting recently, where there wasn't a need for 2 hours of questioning because I really had the information before that Standing Finance Committee started. But let me look now at energy, Jamaica's energy future. Madam Speaker, the energy sector needs bold vision and plans to secure Jamaica's needs and encourage investment for a better mix of energy solutions to reduce our dependence on imported oil and lower the cost, especially of electricity. A strategic objective when I was minister was to reduce the price of electricity to end users. Our goal in 2012 was to reduce the price of electricity to 15 US cents per kilowatt hour. That was the aim. It was a time when the price of electricity was 42 cents. In 2012, the electricity price was 36 cents, 36.43 cents per kilowatt hour. By the time we left office in 2016, it fell to 22.40 cents, about 38% reduction. I think that is a significant reduction. 14 cents less in 4 years. Yet, Madam Speaker, after 5 years, it is back to 28.38 cents, an increase in 26%. Nearly 6 cents more expensive than where we left it. This is quite confusing to the public who see the world price of oil plummeting over the period and our own success in adding new capacity of generated electricity using LNG also being increased. And of course, the renewables being realized objectives. So people are confused. We have brought in so much renewables. We have seen the price of oil going down. LNG now, we have put in over 300 megawatts of LNG capacity. And people are wondering why we see the electricity bills going further. And to make matters worse, the billing exchange rate has moved from an average of 125 Jamaican dollars to 142 over the period. And that also has this escalating effect on people. Since 2016, Madam Speaker, non-fuel charges have increased from US 13 cents per kilowatt hour to 15 cents, and the fuel charges from 9.4 cents to 13.35 cents. These are not good numbers, as electricity is once again becoming too expensive for domestic and for commercial users, and it is time to allow the people to win where electricity is concerned. The lowering of rates were really not rocket science. It resulted from plans to increase renewable energy usage and the introduction of LNG. A reversal of the current trend can only be achieved by, firstly, a more serious and aggressive renewables policy. Secondly, ensuring that the benefits of LNG are fully realized. And thirdly, a greater focus of achieving a more efficient JPSCO grid. Those are the 3 things I want to focus on very quickly. So we need new thinking, bold ideas and strategic investment to resume the downward trajectory. We cannot continue like this. In the last 5 years, the government has not requested any proposal for a single megawatt of energy from renewable sources. And I know the work that has been ongoing, but we have not gone out since 2013 to procure new capacity. All those efforts were done before 2016. Madam Speaker, we are wasting time. Based on the US and other developed countries, plans for improved solar energy technology, panels, inverters, and batteries are expected to continue to soar. Solar panels are becoming far more efficient, with greater capacity and more easily deployed using less roof space. The price is falling for solar panels and will continue in the foreseeable future. The same is happening to inverter technology. All of these prices are coming down. But you know the most exciting development, Madam Speaker, and this would mean a lot to you too, Madam Speaker, coming from where you are, is what is happening in relation to the technology for storage of electricity, batteries. What used to prevent us from moving with solar is the high cost of storing the electricity. And because solar is intermittent, you are not able to make it a perfect substitute for firm capacity. Those days are over. Those days are over. There are tremendous changes taking place, and I know tomorrow the Prime Minister is going to be a part of 40 leaders looking at the world involved in a conference, the World Leaders on Climate Summit, tomorrow. And tomorrow he will be acknowledged because Jamaica is looking good on renewables, those things that we achieved, and not a problem. But he's going to be able to see some of the remarkable changes, developments taking place in renewables, and why his own ambition that we should get to 50% of renewables as our mix can now be increased. But he himself will have to give impetus to that. And, Madam Speaker, a good place to start is on this area of batteries. Because when we had pushed for net billing and encouraged people to get into solar generation, we had removed duties on panels and inverters, and at that time, certain kinds of batteries. There now exist deep life cycle batteries, lithium iron and lithium ferrophosphate, that are far more efficient, far less expensive. And if we are serious about embracing renewables, and in particular solar, we should extend the duty concession to these batteries to make them far less expensive. I also believe, Madam Speaker, and we're going to get into some big thinking now, how we're going to solve the expensive JPSCO grid. We have done a lot on the generation side, but on the transmission and distribution, we haven't done enough. But you know why? There's this thing that has been a problem for us for many years, the theft of electricity. I am told by the OUR that 17.5% of the bills that you pay comprise electricity theft. Wow. So if your bill is $6,000, out of that $6,000, $1,050 is for the electricity theft. Wow. If your bill is $15,000, $2,625 of that is because of the theft of electricity. So I have a proposal for the government to consider, and I have gotten some people to look at how we can generate in a household using 200 to 250 kilowatt hours. What solution we could provide for them who are stealing to enable them to get off the grid. And the proposal is that we use solar to enable 200,000 Jamaicans. The JPS score has confirmed that 200,000 Jamaicans are attached to the grid who are not paying for electricity. So, the current cost of the package, which is your panels, and you don't need as many panels as you did 5 years ago. So even those houses that are modest in poor communities, they can now accommodate 4 or 5 panels. The weight is much less. Yeah. With a more modern inverter and batteries. It is envisaged that in about 2 years' time, the cost of that will be about $100,000. Wow. A reduction from where it is even today. Yeah. We can, over a 5-year period, it will cost you $20 billion, but you can get all of those 200,000 people from the grid and free up the cost so that the legitimate users will be able to see a reduction of their bill by 17.5%. And Minister, if you apportion it per annum, you're looking at about $4 billion per annum. The hedge money that we have quarreled about. You know, one of the reasons why the former Minister of Finance had instituted the hedge was to enable us to take care of the future, to plan to incorporate renewables into the mix. There's no better way to use that hedge money than by investing in this. So I submit that the stealing of electricity is not only a JPSCO problem, but a national one that requires the active involvement of the government to solve it. It is for that reason that I'm proposing, as I just did, that the portion of the hedge be used for that. The people will win, as this will result in a lowering of the cost of electricity to all legitimate consumers, while achieving universal access to electricity for the entire country. Madam Speaker, remember when I touted the Universal Service Fund and the naysayers criticized it as being too fanciful an idea, that it was impractical. If we had carried through all those plans today, we would not be facing the tremendous deficit in access to tablets, computer, and broadband in the wake of this pandemic. Our students would have won in that event. Madam Speaker, let us look briefly at the issue of LNG. It was never intended by our administration that the introduction of LNG would be to one provider, would enable only one provider to participate in the Jamaican market. Our intention was to promulgate regulations to enable transparent and clear rules that would encourage competition. This has not happened, and I therefore call for the 5th straight year that these regulations be brought to this Parliament forthwith. That these regulations should not only be restricted to the area of electricity, but also to the use of LNG in transportation and domestic heating. We'd also like to know if all customers of the current LNG provider contribute to the cost of the infrastructure. Remember, the concept was for Jamaica to become a hub, and that the Jamaican people would have paid for that hub. But as you added to that hub, those other users will now compensate those people who had provided the initial capital outlay, which is Jamaican people. And that as you pass through the fuel, Jamaica would benefit, and you'll see a lowering in the cost of electricity. That has not happened. And, Madam Speaker, electric vehicles. I think we have to urge the government to note the rapid development taking place in the use of electric vehicles. Again, we should not wait for these developments to pass us by. We need to anticipate them, anticipate these revolutionary changes, and prepare for full adoption. So now is the time to prepare and have regulations in place, while at the same time ensuring that the construction of appropriate infrastructure can now commence. Now is the time to modify the motor vehicle import policy to provide for full acceptance of electric vehicles. Madam Speaker, thanks to the quick response again of the Minister, A joint select committee of the Parliament is now reviewing the Electricity Act, which was passed in 2015. There are many achievements and lessons learned, and I look forward to presenting my own proposals in relation to net billing, power wheeling, and auxiliary connection, along with a raft of suggestions for consumer protection. And I want to spend one moment to appeal to the JPSCO. You have been closing a number of your offices island-wide. We understand why you're doing so, but there are people in, say, Clarendon. Because of the closure of the Maypen office, they now have to go into Mandeville, into Spanish Town. It is not fair to them. It is not fair to them. The office in Portmore, it is not fair to them. I think you have to re-establish some of those offices as part of good customer service. Madam Speaker, I have a piece on financing for SMEs in relation to renewables again. I will commend that to the Minister's reading. I also want to spend just a moment on Petrojam. Following the crisis... Thank you very much. Oh yes, so I speak on behalf of both sides today, so I get 2 hours. Madam Speaker, following the crisis of leadership at the refinery, but only to say in relation to SMEs, I think we should also allow small and micro businesses to get on board the renewables train. They can also utilize single unit photovoltaic system, panels, inverters, and batteries to generate their electricity at lower cost. And I believe that you being a governor to the Caribbean Development Bank, I think it is an opportunity for that bank to reach out to small and micro businesses across the Caribbean, including here, to provide direct lending for facilities such as this. It is going to make a tremendous positive impact on the bottom line of these businesses. But you'll be able to see more of that in the presentation. Madam Speaker, following the crisis of leadership at the refinery, a group that was named the ZACA Committee was established to look at the Petrojam refinery. Major recommendations were made, but the report has not yet been considered by any committee of this House. Neither has there been any decision of Cabinet on the way forward. The report has been languishing for 2 years under 2 ministers while our energy insecurity concerns grow. The ZACA report recommends the closure of the refinery and operating the facility as a finished product import terminal. 15.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the member be allowed an additional 10 minutes to complete his presentation.
Yes, for 15.
No, you do 15 minutes.
15. I think I heard the member say 15? Yes, 15.
I ask that he be allowed 15 minutes, Madam Speaker, to complete his presentation. Thank you.
The question before the House is that Mr. Paulwell the member be allowed to have an additional 15 minutes to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Mr. Paul.
Much obliged, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, we believe the issue of Petrojam requires urgent attention. We note the past justifications for maintaining the refinery. It has been a significant manufacturer, adding value and creating high-quality jobs in the economy. It has been an earner of foreign exchange from its exports, and it also saves the country a huge amount of foreign exchange from its import substitution activities. The country has never been out of fuel, believe it or not, over these 4 or so decades of the operations of Petrojam. And there has never been, and there has always been during that time, a shortage of refinery capacity on the eastern side of this hemisphere. Madam Speaker, the ZACA report should be sent forthwith to the Energy Council. And this should be done even before the Cabinet finalizes its position on it, because I think you do have in that body sufficient expertise to be able to provide guidance on it. Madam Speaker, there is in this year's budget an allocation of $12.4 million, 1.8 billion Jamaican dollars, for Petrojam to be used to refurbish tanks, pipelines, and so on. This is a part of a total package of $18 million US dollars, $2.7 billion. So why are you spending this money and you're not sure about the future of the refinery? I think it's a good question to ask and to get an answer. So I myself, Madam Speaker, am reflecting on my own position in relation to the refinery, because one major consideration has to do with the growth of new technologies and whether there still remain viability in traditional fuels like diesel, heavy fuel oil, and gasoline. My previous discussion on electric vehicles is also relevant as we consider a future for Petrojam. We also have to take into account the stark reality of the massive amount of cash that would be needed to upgrade the refinery at this time. And it is not likely in this environment to find all of that cash to do the upgrade. So my own thinking is being modified. But I believe that it's important for us to have that frank discussion now, once and for all, and determine the future of Petrojam. I think it's too important an asset for us to be meandering around. Madam Speaker, also in my presentation is a discussion on Petrojam ethanol, because I still believe that ethanol is a viable fuel which can be produced here using raw materials from sugarcane, cassava, and sorghum. The Minister, I think, will want to reflect on that part of the presentation, because I believe that with St. Thomas being in a position where sugarcane is no longer viable, that crop, sugarcane, could be used instead to develop ethanol, and therein lies a solution to the problem that St. Thomas faces. Member of Parliament. I'm not going to talk today about oil and gas exploration, just to note that things seem to have gone cold, while we see Guyana and all our friends doing wondrous exploration and discoveries. Madam Speaker, the 3D seismic that was done recently showed very positive prospectivity for Jamaica. In fact, one of the diagrams show an area where the estimate is about 500 million barrels of oil or gas equivalent. Let us not put away this dream, this vision. I still believe, in spite of all that we're saying about renewables, that if we have oil here, let us find it, man. And where we're at now is the final stage of the prospectivity, which is to drill. And I think the government needs to go out there and actively pursue that as an opportunity for us. And finally, on the energy side, streetlights. And I'm so happy the Minister of Local Government is here, because in 2016, the JPSCO license was modified to change out 110,000 lamps, the high-pressure sodium bulbs, to LED. The agreement written in the license was for that process to take place over 3 years, 110,000 lamps. This should have resulted in the streetlight bills being reduced from $2.8 billion to $1.4 billion. There was also the commitment for the JPSCO to transform to a smart grid, which would have as a feature the automatic detection of malfunctioning lights. That as I drive around the city and the country, I don't see 110,000 new LED bulbs. I look and I see. Yes. We need to know, and I'm sure the minister in his presentation will tell us how many bulbs have been changed, also the total amount. No, well, I can tell you, Minister, because I have checked the regulator, and it is less than 50% of the objective that has been achieved. But you can imagine if we were able to have achieved that, we'd have been able to provide for, in your budget, another $1 billion to spend on some of the pandemic efforts. So again, I commend this to the government as one area where we could exercise tremendous savings. Mining, Madam Speaker, this sector has been undergoing tremendous hard times. In the bauxite alumina sector, GISCO remains closed at Alpart. Windalco, Duroton is producing, but there are issues that affect them. The country has still not been given, and I'm sure when my colleague comes to speak, he will tell us a little bit more about the profit-sharing arrangement with Noranda. We need to know that. Yeah. And we still await an indication of what is the future of CAP and the Jamaica plant. The sector needs urgent attention as it remains the leader in the mining sector and employs many Jamaicans. Madam Speaker, with the prospect of cheaper energy, we now have to look at some opportunities that exist in this sector. Bold, yes, risky, but bold opportunities. It has already been established, Madam Speaker, that there are significant amounts of iron in the bauxite residue, the red mud. It is time that the government aggressively seeks partners to pursue these opportunities. That's the kind of boldness that's necessary to work our way out of the ravages of the pandemic. Government has to take risks, and the people will understand if you fall short. Madam Speaker, some time ago I spoke about rare earth elements. And today I saw an editorial in the Gleaner about rare earth elements, because some people thought I was mad when I was pushing for...
I didn't think so.
Yes, some people thought so. Pushing for the extraction of rare earth elements from the bauxite residue. We were able to get the Japanese to partner with us in this venture. We were able to successfully demonstrate how you could viably extract rare earth elements using a particular technology which has been patented. That patent is owned jointly by the government of Jamaica and the government of Japan. We are seeing now a shortage of rare earth elements re-emerging. And I see a company in the US that has some relationship with Jamaica. In fact, the red mud that they plan to use to extract rare earth elements from is the bauxite that they took from Jamaica. And it is now in Louisiana, and they're expecting to extract rare earth elements from that. Let us not let them beat us to it. Let us not let them beat us to it. We already own the technology, and we need to utilize it. But it requires us facing off some investors and saying, listen, let us work together to build this opportunity for Jamaica, to add value right here in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the issue of the environment and mining. You always have the tension between the citizens who live in and around the area and the miners. And we have to find a way for people to coexist. The Jamaica Bauxite Institute is the industry regulator. We need to see greater regulatory vigor from them. There needs to be better responses on all the issues affecting citizens, including the land use, restoration of mined out land, and safety standards. The issues with the cockpit country also remain unresolved. Whereas there has been agreement on the boundaries, the government is yet to impose a no mining order with the relevant demarcation necessary for enforcement. Funds have not been provided to complete this exercise. That is why, Madam Speaker, the citizen and lobby groups remain suspicious, lacking the faith that the system will not double-cross them and destroy the pristine environment. And of course, the proposed dry harbour mining license is also unresolved, as the relevant agencies appear to be at odds with each other. That really is a matter, and I know the Prime Minister is to answer some questions on that very shortly. So, Madam Speaker, Jamaica needs a comprehensive policy for the extractive sector and a mining plan to promote its development in a country rich with minerals. Madam Speaker, as I promised at the outset, I have highlighted the issues and proposed some new solutions in the energy and mining sectors that can move Jamaica forward. If the time was limited, we could have gone on to some more ideas, but those will come at the Energy Council and at the Mining Council. We cannot do better for our people by tinkering at the margins. We need big ideas which will yield big results and bring real progress and prosperity. Many things are coming together with technology improvement to give Jamaica a better prospect of better outcomes for people if we seize the moment. If it has a silver lining, the pandemic has forced us to find new and more efficient ways of delivering goods and services to our people. Innovate and create have become watchwords to survive the times and to point the way of the future. We must embrace it as a people and as a government. Look at ideas and not the sources of the ideas. We are all in this thing together, so we also must work it out together. I urge a new era of cooperation and big thinking for survival and growth. Yes, we are into our 6th quarter of decline due to COVID-19, but we must find new ways, as decline into nothing is not an option. There is no monopoly of ideas, whether on that side or on this, and we are not to be afraid of ideas. I want to thank the Minister for Technology, who my colleague from Northwest St. Catherine made special mention at Digicel 20th anniversary of the role that others played in Digicel's own fortunes. I didn't even realize that it's 20 years already, but that is a big idea coming to fruition after 20 years. So, Madam Speaker, I plan to give the ideas, and we hope that they will be accepted. As we head to 2022, the Diamond Jubilee year of our independence from Britain, let us resolve to halt the economic and social slide. Our people deserve better. Madam Speaker, we ask God to inspire each of us to discern and to choose wisely and become more aligned with the public good. I call upon each of us to set aside our differences, find common ground, and join hands and hearts to deliver for the people we were elected to serve. Let us unite in purpose and action and continue to build a better Jamaica where the citizens feel that as a government wins, that a government's win is their victory, as the policies and initiatives positively impact their lives. Together we will rise, thrive, and prosper. Madam Speaker, let us resolve to love Jamaica and one another more. God bless us all. God protect us all. God bless Jamaica, land we love.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for the debate to be suspended until next week, April 27, when the presenters, speakers will be Honorable Carl Samuda and Member Anthony Hilton. Madam Speaker, I now call on Minister Chuck to take the Justices of the Peace Amendment Act 2021.
Just before you do, Minister Chuck, let me on behalf of us thank very much the member for his presentation and his approach and his call for us to work together for the good of the nation. Thank you very much. The question before the House is that the sectoral debate be suspended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister Chuck.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, members of this Honourable House will recall that the appointment, jurisdiction and conduct of the Justices of the Peace are currently established and regulated by the Justices of the Peace Act 2018. Section 8.1 of the Justice of the Peace Act, Madam Speaker, states, amongst other things, that the parish, as constituted by the Counties and Parishes Act, for which a justice is appointed, shall be the parish in which the justice resides or has his or her principal place of work. The Ministry of Justice, Madam Speaker, administers the services to facilitate appointment of Justices of the Peace in keeping with the Justices of the Peace Act 2018. Madam Speaker, since the promulgation of the Justice of the Peace Act in 2018, there has been a significant increase in the number of Justices of the Peace across the island, resulting in a total of way over 9,000 Justices of the Peace island-wide as at March 31st, 2021. However, Madam Speaker, as it pertains to the parish of Kingston, the fact is that historically and currently, for the appointment of Justice of the Peace in the parish of Kingston, there exists interchangeably use of Kingston and St. Andrew as regard the residence and our principal place of work for persons to serve as Justices of the Peace in Kingston. Madam Speaker, Kingston is the smallest parish in Jamaica, occupying less than 22 square kilometers, 8.5 square miles, and although the Justice of the Peace citizen ratio for Kingston is 1 to 62, an estimated 50% or above all applicants and serving Justices of the Peace for Kingston reside and or have their principal place of work in St. Andrew. This is consequent, Madam Speaker, on the nature of judicial and economic activities in Kingston, which require a strong need for Justice of the Peace services in the parish. Madam Speaker, today I place before this Honourable House a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Justice of the Peace Act and for Connected Matters, which seeks to remedy the current language of Section 8.1 of the Justice of the Peace Act to ensure a fluidity and ease of access for persons to apply and become Justices of the Peace once they reside and or have their principal place of work in either the parish of Kingston or St. Andrew. The amendment in Section 1 is necessary, Madam Speaker, to resolve any conflict on the current treatment of applications for Kingston and St. Andrew. Cabinet, Madam Speaker, has granted approval for this reference amendment to Section 8.1 of the Justice of the Peace Act and to validate appointment of persons who have already been appointed as Justice of the Peace in either Kingston or St. Andrew, despite residing and working in the other parish. So, Madam Speaker, it's a very simple problem. What happens is that the Act itself allows the custodians to appoint applicants if they're living or residing in the parish. What will happen is that in Kingston and St. Andrew, what has happened over the years, and still happens, is that most of the people live and work in St. Andrew, but they're appointed by the custos of Kingston. So this, Madam Speaker, is a remedy so that Kingston and St. Andrew, in many ways, have been seen almost like one parish. Even the county itself is the Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation. So what we're doing is to amend the Act, Madam Speaker, to allow that even if you live and work in St. Andrew, the custos of Kingston can appoint you. And, Madam Speaker, there are about 80 justices who are now waiting commissioning. But when we check, they're all living and working in St. Andrew. So we have held them up for quite a few months, and we're hoping this bill will be passed very soon to allow these justices to be appointed. But, Madam Speaker, with your permission, and especially for the new members of Parliament, to note a few points I would like to make. There are many communities without justices of the peace. Let me say, first of all, Madam Speaker, the Attestation of Facilities Act allows all members of Parliament to act as a justice of the peace. In the last term, Madam Speaker, there were at least 3 members of Parliament who are no longer here, but the member from Eastern St. Thomas, the member from Northern Clarendon, and the member from Southeast St. Catherine really wanted to be justice of the peace. And all my attempts with the custodies to work out a proper method for members of Parliament who want to be formally appointed as justice of the peace did not work, because the custodians were insisting that they must go through the normal process. But after much discussion, Madam Speaker, the custodians have agreed that they don't have to apply, or even if they apply, they don't have to go through the normal process of being interviewed. So any member of Parliament who would like not only to act as a justice of the peace, which they can now do, but to be able to get the seal of the justice of the peace, all they need to do now is to inform the custos, maybe put in the application. They won't have to go through any process of interviewing, etc., and references. The custodians will accept your application, but you will have to go through the 18-hour training that everyone goes through. And that 18 hours training is done by Supreme Court judges, parish court judges, senior attorneys, which allow you to understand the whole process. So it's a good process to go through the 18 hours. So we are saying, Mr. Speaker, that all members of Parliament can now go through the 18 hours training, and you get the seal, and you are entitled to put JP behind your name. Right? Right. Having said that, Madam Speaker, sorry, Mr. Speaker, the members of Parliament have always complained that they don't have enough justices of the peace in several of their communities. I have mentioned that repeatedly to the custodians. The position is that members of Parliament should encourage outstanding citizens in these communities to apply. And even if they take the application and send it to the custos, nothing is wrong with that. But at the end of the day, the fact that the Member of Parliament recommends someone doesn't mean that automatically the persons will be a JP. The truth of the matter is that the custodians, along with the superintendent or his deputy, the senior magistrate within the parish, interview all the applicants in order to determine if the application should go forward or if they should be accepted to be commissioned of justice of the peace. So nothing is wrong with the members of Parliament recommending or even sending the application to the custos. But quite frankly, just encourage the persons to download the application form or get it from the Justice Center or from the custos and let them put in their applications. The position, Madam Speaker, is that we need more justices of the peace across the island. Mr. Speaker, the truth of the matter is that these outstanding citizens are playing a great role to assist citizens, members of the community, to really not only engage with the departments and agencies of government, but for identification purposes, for information, and generally to assist the citizens in a meaningful way. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, there are some justices of the peace who have been acting inappropriately, demanding payment for services. That is condemned by the Act. So that any justice of the peace who acts inappropriately, like collecting money or demanding money for service, if it is brought to the attention of the custos, they can be put before the disciplinary committee and decommissioned. Mr. Speaker, the justice of the peace over the decades and centuries have served this country well. We cannot allow a few rogues, if I might put it that way, to act inappropriately and damage the image of this very important vocation that serves communities and the country. Mr. Speaker, I would like to emphasize that the justices of the peace have been really the guardians of peace, justice, discipline, good information in the communities. And we want more persons to serve as justices of the peace. And I want to thank those who have been serving and all of the justices of the peace. It is a fact, Mr. Speaker, that many, having been commissioned, their profile. We want all of them to really participate. The Ministry of Justice has many good programs, and we're trying to get all the justices of the peace to participate in these programs as restorative justice facilitators, child diversion officers, victim services counselors, and shortly mediators. So these are areas where justices of the peace can participate and serve their communities even better. Mr. Speaker, the justices of the peace have been serving as lay magistrates and have done an excellent job. But there are other areas, as I've mentioned, restorative justice, child diversion, victim services, where they can bring even more benefits and assistance to the community. Up to last night, Mr. Speaker, I was speaking to justices from St. Mary, urging them that we have now this pandemic of domestic abuse, domestic violence. And this is where the justice of the peace will have to try to identify where these occur and bring them to the victim services for counseling or to the justice center to resolve these disputes that may emerge into abuse. So, Mr. Speaker, having made these points, I'd just like to briefly indicate that the Act has two sections, clauses. Clause 1 is the title. Section 2 basically indicate, as I indicated, that the justice to be appointed in Kingston or St. Andrew can either live and or work in Kingston or St. Andrew. And clause 3, for those justices who have been appointed in, say, Kingston, but did not have their place of work or residence in Kingston, for validation in clause 3. With those points, Mr. Speaker, I ask for the approval of this House for this bill.
Mr. Speaker, we on this side have no opposition to the bill that is before us. In fact, we have known for quite some time that, especially for Kingston and St. Andrew, how difficult it has been, because, as the Minister rightly said, Kingston and St. Andrew in so many ways operate as one, and therefore the interchangeability between where you live, where you work, and being able to actually work as Justice of the Peace is a natural progression, and it's something that actually makes sense and needed to have been done. I note the Minister's words around members of Parliament who are interested in serving as Justice of the Peace, and that the recommendation for them to skip the vetting process and with training to operate as such. You know, Minister, every time we ask that members of Parliament carve out a special place for them in a system that is set out with rules, you know that there are individuals who look at it. And I believe that for us to make sure that people understand and believe that this is normal and natural, we have to preserve the integrity of the Member of Parliament, the position called Member of Parliament. So what that means as well is that we all have to make sure that how we act is above reproach. We all have to make sure that there are no rumors swirling around us, so that we can dispel any of those. And we owe it to ourselves and to each other, so that when those special carve-outs are done, then people understand that in the House are members of integrity and who guard that integrity, well, and will do everything to make sure that it is preserved. I also want to encourage members, upstanding members of the community, to volunteer and to serve, to be willing to serve as justices of the peace. I know a number of them, when you talk to them, they are interested in serving. Sometimes it's difficult, depending on the community, and especially for those who live in the community they serve, because some work in the community they serve, and therefore the demands on their time and service is not the same as those who live in the communities that they serve. They come in many ways like members of parliament and other elected officials, where there's no start time for work and there's no end time for work. The entire day is at the disposal of members of their community. So I want to just say that, encourage them, and I'm grateful that you have done that as well, and thank them for the service that they continue to play, and to encourage them to also look at all the various opportunities that exist for them to give service to their community.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill entitled An Act to Amend the Justices of the Peace Act and for Connected Matters. I believe that the proposed amendments make sense and will go a long way in ensuring that the functions of the Office of Justice of the Peace are discharged with greater administrative ease, to ensure that persons are served better. I confess that since the policy was approved and the bill tabled, I've had reason to think a little further on the Justice of the Peace jurisdiction and the regime. And I'm now wondering aloud for the Minister's hearing whether we shouldn't at a later stage consider widening the jurisdiction, given that we have counties, and so the jurisdiction could be extended within the counties. But persons also live within borders of parishes, and sometimes are easier served on one side than on the other side, even though their addresses are within a parish. So it's something for further consideration. But for this short amendment, it makes sense, and I fully support and commend it for the support of the House.
I want to thank the member from South St. Andrew and West Central, Southwest St. Andrew and West Central St. James for their contribution. Just to respond briefly to the member from the Honorable Attorney General, member from West Central St. Andrew. Note that once commissioned, West Central St. James, once West Central, yes, but once commissioned, a GP becomes a GP of Jamaica, once commissioned. The reason why we have restricted the commissioning to the parish is that you have a custos of each parish. So to the extent that a person, even if he or she is commissioned in one parish, but say moves to another parish, he can inform the both custodies that he has moved from this parish to the next parish. Or even if he was commissioned at any time in one parish, but he's living in another parish or working in another parish, he can give his allegiance to the parish in which he now lives and works, just informing the customers from the parish that he's moving. We're trying as best as possible to organize the justice of the peace within their parishes to ensure that they can better deliver service within their communities. Because the truth of the matter, Mr. Speaker, and members will know, there are so many people every day looking for a JP. And what we have been doing, I can just inform the House, every JP will have access now to an email on the Ministry of Justice website, so that if you're a JP, let us say it is Angela Brown, it will be angela.brown@jp.gov.jm. Yes. So within another few weeks, every JP, a person could access a JP by just sending an email to the first name dot last name at jp.gov.jm and expect a response. And so we are organizing the justice of the peace because they're doing a great job. But we want them to have access to email. We are doing a training. In fact, tomorrow night, we are going to be training JPs to learn, because a lot of JPs are elderly like me, who are technologically challenged. So we are going to be training them now how to use the TAJ, Tax Administration of Jamaica. We'll be showing them how they can pay taxes online and generally do things online. Because if they do that, it eases their burden of travel and ease efficiency. So, Mr. Speaker, with those responses, I ask a second reading of the bill.
The question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Justices of the Peace and for Connected Matters read a second time. Let me read that again. A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Justices of the Peace Act and for Connected Matters read a second time.
The committee stage.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider bill clause by clause.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think there are any changes or corrections or amendment. I would like us to just put clauses 1, 2, and 3. So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask that you put clauses 1, 2, and 3 for approval.
The question is that I put clause 1, 2, and 3 to the floor. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? Ayes have it.
Could you? I put the enacting clause, the title and enacting clause.
I put the enacting clause, the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Those against? The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with or without amendment. Those in favor?
Aye. Without, yes.
I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment, without amendments.
Mr. Speaker, I now ask for third reading. Madam Speaker, I now ask a third reading.
Madam Clerk, the question is that I now ask that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Justices of the Peace Act and for Connected Matters, read a third time and passed.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business for this afternoon, so I ask that we adjourn until April 27, next Tuesday, when we will resume. Thank you.
Question before the House is that this House is
2 p.m.,
adjourned.
Madam Speaker.
That the House is adjourned until next Tuesday, the 27th of April. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House now stands adjourned.